So in 2021, the Jaguars locked up the number one overall pick for the first time in our franchise's history. And the day the Jaguars locked up that pick, every Jaguars fan, everybody nationally, just everybody knew exactly who the Jaguars were going to take, and that was Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was sharpied to be on the Jaguars roster essentially in December, 5 months before the NFL draft even took place. So it wasn't that hard to really predict and project where the Jaguars are going to be picking. Now we're running it back. The Jaguars have the number one pick in the 2022 NFL draft, and this is stirring up a little bit of controversy, mostly just within the Jaguars fan base. I mean, people were going at each other's necks when it comes to who they think the Jaguars should draft at number one and what they think the Jaguars should do with the number one pick, whether it be draft this guy, that guy, or trade back in the draft. There's a whole lot of different scenarios that the Jaguars can do with the number one pick. And a lot of people are complaining. It's like, man, we would have the number one pick, and there's doesn't seem like there's anybody worthy of having the number one pick. But I don't really do that very much just because, look, yeah, it might be unfortunate that there's no Chase Young, Myles Garrett, whatever, and even no quarterback prospect where the Jaguars can potentially get a gold mine of picks to move back. But the Jaguars, when they did have the number one pick for the first time in their franchise's history, it just happened to come in a year where a generational quarterback prospect like Trevor Lawrence was coming out. So it's kind of leveling out right now. Well, I look super low in this video. I'll try to stand up a little bit. But yeah, I mean the Jaguars. I mean, I guess they kind of equal each other out. So I'm not going to complain too much. But yeah, now we kind of discuss like what did the Jaguars do with the summer one pick? And I kind of talk about this before free agency because it feels like what the Jaguars plans to do with the number one pick is going to really impact free agency. Right now, when it comes to the number one overall pick, the debate is pretty much between do we want to grab offensive tackle Evan Neal or do we want to go for one of the edge rushers when it comes to Kayvon Thibodeau or Aiden Hutchinson. And here's the thing. The Jaguars right now, there is a huge need at offensive tackle. I mean, there really is because right now, Cam Robinson is set to be a free agent. He's been the Jaguar starting left tackle for 5 years straight. And you also have a guy in Walker Little who is actually pretty good. He kind of came on at the end of the year, kind of in place of Cam Robinson when he got injured toward the end of the year. And then there's Jawan Taylor, who seems like a replaceable guy. You know what I mean? So right now, and especially after this Super Bowl, we saw Joe Burrow get knocked around a bunch. And a lot of people say, oh, the Bengals made the Super Bowl with not a very good offensive line. But the thing is, that is the exception. It is not the rule. Generally, the teams with the best trenches, offensive line and defensive line, typically win the most games, and they typically win the Super Bowl. And that's kind of what happened when it comes to the Rams over the Bengals. At the very end of the game, when they absolutely needed to block somebody, Aaron Donald broke through and sacked Joe Burrow when there was a wide open Jamar Chase. You know what I mean? The bad offensive line was the Bengals' ultimate downfall. And I know I'm not even a Bengals fan, and man, seeing Joe Burrow get knocked around the way he did, it sucked to see. It was really, really hard to see. You know what I mean? And after that game, I'm like, look, man, the Jaguars, because just 1 year ago, I was all on the train of, okay, this offseason, I want to do everything we can to make sure that Trevor Lawrence walks into a good situation. The Jaguars did not do that. The Jaguars more so focused on the defensive side of the ball. When it comes to the free agents that they got, they brought in Shaquille Griffin on a pretty good deal. They brought in Rayshawn Jenkins on a pretty good deal. They beefed up the defensive line a little bit, and they didn't do anything to the offensive line. They brought in like Marvin Jones, a 30-year-old wide receiver, not a guy that's really going to move the needle a lot. And that's pretty much it. So this offseason, now it's time. It's like, look, we need to definitely do what we can to help out Trevor Lawrence. And I think so far the Jaguars have done that. Before free agency and the draft, I think the Jaguars have done that because when you look, Doug Peterson, he's a quarterback's type of coach, play quarterback. He was quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, and that's his big thing is about how he's able to mentor young quarterbacks. And you also look at the staff that he's built. Our offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, former quarterback. He's an offensive coordinator type of guy. You also Mike McCoy, the quarterback's coach. He played quarterback. The passing game coordinator, Rob, what's his name? Like Van Cooter. Man, what's his name? His name is like Jim Bob Cooter. Yeah, there you go. I was like Rob something. Yeah, it was Jim Bob Cooter, the passing game coordinator. He was a former quarterback. You know what I mean? So the Jaguars, they're surrounding Trevor Lawrence with coaches that can see the game through Trevor Lawrence's eyes. Now it's time to do the things around him. Beef up the offensive line. And I'm not saying go out there and draft Evan Neal at number 1, but I think it would be a significant upgrade. And then you have, and it depends on like where are you going to play him? Because right now, I pretty much projected Evan Neal left tackle and move Walker Little to right tackle because I think that Walker Little needs to be a starter next year. And I don't know, because Walker Little, he showed early on in the year that maybe he's not very good at right tackle, but he also showed he wasn't good at left tackle earlier on in the year. And once he got some experience, he was actually pretty good at left tackle. So I don't know how hard it is to move him over to right tackle. I don't know Evan Neal's experience at right tackle. That's all stuff that the coaching staff and the scouting department need to do work on. And then, boom, if you bring in Evan Neal, you have 2 guys on the edges that are, a lot of upside, and also they're cheap for the next several years. Walker Little in his second year, and then Evan Neal on a rookie deal, then quarterback Trevor Lawrence, second year on a quarterback deal. Man, you can really go out there and throw some money at some wide receivers and tight ends, and even some interior offensive linemen. So the Jaguars, they need to do major construction on the offensive line, and Evan Neal very much might be fit for that number 1 pick. But we also look at the other side of the ball. What about the defensive ends in this draft? I am not really on a Kayvon Thibodeau train. I worry about his effort. I don't think he's a high effort guy, and even some of the things when he speaks to the media, it raises some red flags to me. But when you look at a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, Aiden Hutchinson is a high motor guy. He is a guy that has really shot up his draft status, and that could also be a very interesting thing because the Jaguars, they do need another edge rusher. Outside of Josh Allen, the Jaguars really do need a game wrecker there. I think Josh Allen is a great number 2 guy. I think Dwan Smoot's a great number 3 guy, but they still need that high impact guy that that other teams really have to scout for. The other teams have to, when they're playing him that week, they have to figure out how to block him. And I think Aiden Hutchinson might be able to fit that bill a little bit more, but the Jaguars have to do work on that, obviously. And I'm no draft prospect expert. I never claimed to be, So I'm not going to sit here and, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable sitting here and really telling you where I project different guys, but that's kind of how I am with that. And, there's the option about potentially trading back in a draft. Now, Jag fans are like, oh, I want to trade back. Trade back's what I want to do. Okay, next. It's like, but it really is not that easy. Because, if you look at the 2021 NFL draft, the value to move back from number 1 to 5, we would probably be having multiple first-round picks every year for the next decade. That was how valuable the number 1 pick is. But this year, if you move back from the number 1 pick to number 5 pick, you might only get a second-round pick. And at that point, is it worth it? Because it's really hard to project what kind of value you're going to get to move back because, all of us are saying, oh, nobody is worth taking number 1 overall. Let's just trade back. But then on the flip side of that, if there's nobody worth the number 1 overall pick, why would other teams want to trade up? Right now, everybody's just hoping that Kenny Pickett or one of these, Malik, the quarterback out of Liberty, I believe. They're all hoping that these guys can shoot their draft stock up in a combine or in their pro days, or a team like the Panthers or something like that gets really desperate and wants to move up. But at this point, people are saying, it's just funny when people say nobody's worth number one pick, let's trade back. Well, it's like, okay, if there's no one worth number one overall pick, why would teams want to trade up? So at that point, it's like, what would you take? Like I said, if you move from the number one overall pick to number 5 overall pick, what would you want for that? If the only thing you can get is a second round pick, would you still be willing to do it? I mean, a second round pick's a good pick, but right now where the Jaguars stand, they have their pick of anybody they want in the draft. Anybody they want. So that's valuable. You know what I mean? You don't want to trade back and all of a sudden you get your third or fourth highest rated player, and then that player that gets drafted number 1 goes on to have a all-pro career. We've seen that far too many times. So, we have to figure that out. And then there's also other options. There's a good safety from Notre Dame in this draft, even if you want a wide receiver. And I'm not against those either, especially like wide receiver. Like, look, if you can guarantee me that we can draft a wide receiver number 1 and they're going to turn into Justin Jefferson, I would do it. I don't buy into the fact that, so-and-so position is not worth drafting at so-and-so spot. You know what I mean? Like, an offensive guard isn't worth being drafted there. I would take Quentin Nelson right now. Wide receiver isn't worth number 1. I would take not Garrett Wilson, although I really like him. I would take Justin Jefferson right now. You know what I mean? So I don't buy into the fact that a player isn't worth a number 1 pick. But you can't get desperate chasing positions of need, especially this early on. Back in 2014, the Bills really needed a wide receiver. So they picked Sammy Watkins. The very next pick, Khalil Mack goes off the board. Sammy Watkins is a good player, but they passed up on Khalil Mack. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff can really bite you in the long run if you're chasing need over value. You know what I mean? It's different if it's later on, if it's a 4th round and the 81st best player on your board is available, but you go with the 83rd because you need that position a little bit more. Maybe you address that position earlier on. Then it's a little bit different. But the amount, the difference in value early on in the draft from 1 to 2, from 2 to 4, all that stuff is astronomically different than later on. So that's kind of what I say about that. But yeah, the Jaguars had to figure this out. As people say, it's a really, really weak class, but hey, go find your guys. In 2013, it was a terrible draft class. Eric Fisher, Luke Jokel, there was Deion Jordan coming out. There were all these guys, but hey, in the 20s, DeAndre Hopkins went. You know what I mean? Of course, if the Chiefs picked DeAndre Hopkins at pick number 1, everybody would have been crucified. Everyone would have been talking all this stuff at him. But at the end, it would have played out that, look, he was worth the number 1 pick. You know what I mean? So I don't know. We'll see. So right now, and me as a YouTuber, my greatest strength about this channel, I think, is that I am a fan of the Jaguars because my fandom drives this channel. It makes me motivated to speak my mind, get some stuff off of my chest. It connects me with Jaguar fans. There's a whole lot of things that being a fan of this team is a great pro for myself. But also my greatest weakness as a YouTuber is that I am a fan of the Jaguars. And sometimes I can get really emotional. Sometimes I can get wish-washy. Like right now, today, I would draft Evan Neal at number 1. I would. But next week, I might say, hey, maybe I draft Aiden Hutchinson. You know what I mean? I might be all over the place on this, and I'm an emotional guy. My greatest strength is also my greatest weakness. So I know that annoys some people, so I do apologize for that. And I can't guarantee that I won't change my mind again. But right now, as it stands, I would take Evan Neal. And of course, this is all also pending what we would get to move back. I would love to move back. I would love to move from number 1 to 4, pick up a 1st round pick and a 3rd round pick. I would love to do that, but I don't think that's possible. You know what I mean? And it's too impossible to predict what we're going to get to move back. I would not move from number 1 to 5 and only pick up a second rounder. You know what I mean? I would do it for a first rounder, but maybe not a second rounder. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. But if we're taking out the whole trade back thing, I take Evan Neal at number 1. That directly helps Trevor Lawrence. And we might know after free agency what the Jaguars will do at number 1. Because look, if they let Cam Robinson walk and all they do is sign an interior lineman, then it's like, okay, I don't know. But if they also go out there and they sign Chandler Jones as a defensive end, they probably aren't drafting, Aiden Hutchinson. So I don't know. I do think it's going to be very telling of free agency, potentially what the Jaguars do. So because I wouldn't just let Cam Robinson walk on the streets if you don't have like a clear upgrade in sight or coming. So, we'll see. I wouldn't trust Walker Little and Cam Robinson as our guys that are protecting the most valuable asset on our team. I would definitely rather have like an Evan Neal, Walker Little combo. I think that would be really, really good and spend a lot of money at left guard to replace Andrew Norwell. And then try to find some wide receiver help. That's what I would do. We ruined Trevor Lawrence. I'm not ruined him, but we did not set him up for any success in 2021. And I don't think the roster was the biggest issue. I think coaching was the biggest issue. They installed a terrible offense, and players and especially the quarterback did not prosper from that. 2022 is all about making things right. You know what I mean? Make sure this offense is set to help Trevor Lawrence succeed. You know what I mean? Because we've been seeing too many quarterbacks get a little bit mad at their teams, and a lot of times quarterbacks hold all the cards. If a player really, really wants out, they generally get out, and we have to make sure that doesn't happen with Trevor Lawrence. So, with all that said, that's all I got. Let me know what you guys think about the number 1 pick. If you guys want to trade back, if you guys comment down below, I want to trade back. Let me know, what would you trade back for? Where do you want to trade from number 1 to where? And let me know what draft compensation you are looking for, because I'm curious about where you guys are at with that, because I've seen a lot of people, I want to trade back, but for what? I'm curious to see that. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. This is UCF Jaguar, and I'm out.